The kitchen always smelled like jasmine and toasted bread. I was 8, and the world felt safest when I was sitting on the counter, legs dangling, watching Mom pour boiling water into her chipped porcelain teapot. She always used loose-leaf tea, never bags. Said it tasted more real that way, like love steeped slowly. She had a way of making everything feel soft. Her voice never rushed, not even when the day did. She'd wake me with a kiss on the forehead, wrap my scarf around my neck twice, and tuck a handwritten note into my lunchbox, just a few words. But I always read them like treasure. We didn't talk much about big things then, but she always listened. When I babbled about a story I'd written or cried over a scraped knee, her hands would find mine, steady and warm. She didn't fix everything. She didn't try to. She just stayed beside me. That was enough. Evenings were our time. We'd sit by the window with mismatched teacups, mine filled with warm milk, hers with that floral blend I pretended to like. She'd smile as I made faces after each sip, but she never said a word. She knew I wasn't drinking it for the taste. I was drinking it because she had made it. Saturdays were for cleaning, folding laundry, hanging damp sheets out in the sun. She hummed when she worked, never full songs, just small melodies stitched between her movements. I followed her like a shadow, soaking in her rhythm, her calm. She was never dramatic, never loud, but everything she did told me I mattered. She gave in thousands of quiet ways, warm baths when I was sick, gentle brushes through my hair, a worn sweater always folded at the edge of my bed before cold nights. Back then, I never questioned that love. It was woven into the very air I breathed. And the kettle, always whistling at the same hour each night, became a kind of comfort bell. A signal. Mom is here. Everything is all right. I thought it would last forever, the way children do. At 16, the scent of jasmine started to annoy me. I wanted the perfume that my friends wore, the late-night phone calls, the music that made my mother raise an eyebrow. Her tea felt too quiet, her presence too predictable. I began closing the door more often, sliding in my earbuds, escaping into a world where I didn't have to answer questions about where I'd been or what time I'd be home. She still left the kettle on, still folded my sweaters, still laid out a cup for me in the evenings. But I didn't come. I told her I had homework. I told her I wasn't thirsty. I told her I was tired, when the truth was, I didn't want to sit in the silence and feel like a child again. By 17, I had learned to roll my eyes expertly. She'd ask if I'd eaten, and I'd mumble something while texting under the table. She'd try to hug me before I left, and I'd step back, brushing past her with the kind of coldness only teenagers seem to master. I thought I was growing. I thought I was shedding something old, something unnecessary. She didn't argue, she didn't chase, but I saw the way her shoulders folded in a little more each week. How the house began to grow quieter. The tea sat untouched. She still cooked for me, still asked about my day, but her voice became softer, her eyes sadder. At 19, I left for college, a different city, a different rhythm. She cried at the airport. I pretended not to notice. My friends were waiting for me at the gate. Laughing, I waved at her, half-heartedly, and boarded without turning back. She called every Sunday for the first year. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I didn't. She always left a message. Just thinking of you. Love. Call when you can. I almost never did. There were parties, group projects, new faces, late nights that bled into morning. There was no time for tea. No time for a mother's worry. No space in my world for gentle hands and soft reminders. She waited anyway, every week, every message, every silence. But I never looked back. I was 28 when I saw her name on my phone. Mom. Just that. I was in a meeting. Or maybe it was dinner with colleagues. I don't even remember. I let it ring. I told myself I'd call her back later, maybe tomorrow. I was tired. The day had been long. The next morning, I woke to a text from my aunt. Call me. It's your mom. My chest sank before I even read the next message. She was gone. A stroke. Fast. No warning. No time. She had collapsed alone in the kitchen. The kettle still warm. Her favorite teacup already waiting on the table. I dropped the phone. I didn't cry, not then. I sat on the edge of the bed with my heart pounding and a terrible emptiness spreading inside me. I told myself it wasn't real. That I could still call. That she would pick up this time. I even dialed her number. No one answered. Flying home felt like stepping through molasses. The hours stretched and warped. My chest ached like it couldn't hold the weight of what I'd missed. I clutched my coat to my chest and stared out the plane window, wondering how the world could keep spinning while mine had fallen apart. I walked back into the house I'd grown up in. Everything looked smaller. Dust had settled in the corners. The jasmine tin still sat beside the stove. The mug with the tiny chip on the rim still hung on its hook. Her slippers waited by the door like she might come back to fill them. I stood in the kitchen and stared at the kettle. The one she'd used every day. The one I'd ignored for years. My legs gave out and I sank to the floor, clutching the edge of the counter like it could anchor me to some version of her that still existed. I wanted one more evening. Just one. One more shared cup of tea. One more chance to look into her eyes and say the things I'd never had time for. But the seat across from mine would stay empty. And the tea would go cold. The next morning, I wandered through the house like a ghost. I opened drawers I had never cared to explore before. Touched picture frames I used to ignore. I found myself in the kitchen again, in front of her old recipe box. I lifted the lid, more out of habit than purpose. Inside were faded index cards in her soft, looping handwriting, cakes, soups, jams. And then I saw it. A folded note with my name on the outside, written in ink that had smudged slightly with time. I froze. My fingers trembled as I opened it. It wasn't long, just a few lines. She'd written that she was proud of me, no matter how far I wandered. That she knew I would find my way back one day. That she loved me, even when I didn't answer. Even when I didn't come. I broke then. I sat at the table, her letter clutched in one hand, and poured a cup of tea into her favorite mug. I set it down across from mine, just like she used to. But she wasn't there, just the steam rising silently between us. I whispered every word I should have said while she was alive. Thank you. I'm sorry. I love you. But silence was all that answered me. By 30, I had stopped chasing everything that never mattered. Parties, promotions, praise, they all felt hollow now. I carried her flannel shawl with me in my bag. I kept a tin of jasmine tea in my cupboard. I started visiting her grave every Sunday. I'd bring a thermos and 2 cups. I poured one for her and one for me. And I talked. Really talked. Now, I tell people what I never told her in time. I tell them to sit down. To make time. To listen. To pour that cup of tea while they still can. Because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a chipped mug. A folded note. A warm kettle waiting in the corner of a kitchen. And sometimes it's the last cup of tea you never shared. Don't wait.